So last time we went through the numbers your server publishes about itself and how you turn those into a dashboard that answers something. And today we go underneath it because a server can only report on itself. It can tell you how many requests it's holding and how long each stage took, and it can't tell you what the card underneath was doing while that happened. So say your token rate is about half what it was last week. The traffic hasn't changed, and every panel you built last time still looks structurally correct. So where should you look next? I am Mani Khanuja, Principal Generative AI Specialist Solutions Architect at AWS. Let's get into it. There are two tools underneath that dashboard, and they answer two different questions. But before either of them, I want to give you what each one costs you, because that should tell you which one to pick up. One of them is probably already running on your machines, and you can read it for nothing. The other one is going to slow your server down for as long as it's on. So we go in that order, right? You ask the cheapest thing that could answer the question, and you only pay for the next one when that comes back with nothing. So the cheap one first, and these are hardware counters. And by that I mean numbers the GPU keeps about its own insides, sampled a few times a second by an agent running beside your server. On NVIDIA hardware, that agent is DCGM, and it will very likely be deployed wherever your GPUs are because the cluster uses it for health monitoring anyway. Now, we said earlier in the course that your card's own utilization percentage isn't measuring capacity at all, and it can read 100% while nearly all of that silicon does nothing. So the first counter down here is the honest version of that number. And what does it ask? How busy the multiprocessors were. And those are the few hundred little processors inside the card where your math actually happens. And why is it honest? Because it averages over every single one of them. So a quiet multiprocessor pulls that number down and a busy one pushes it up. NVIDIA's wording is on screen. A job that runs the whole interval on a fifth of the machine will give you 20%. And that same job reads 100% on the number we just talked about. So that one number already tells you whether the whole card was busy or whether only part of it was. And at 2 in the morning, that's a very different thing to know. And then 3 more, and each one is a resource. Was the tensor pipe active? So are you really using the tensor cores you paid for? Was the memory interface active? So how close are you to using up your bandwidth? And how many bytes crossed NVLink, the fast link between the cards? So how much time went on GPUs talking rather than computing? The field names are on the card and in the description, and we will come back to them at the close because they have moved. So is any one of those 4 a verdict on its own? No. We get a verdict by crossing them against each other. And this is the card to screenshot. Say your multiprocessors are busy, the tensor pipe's quiet, and the memory interface is busy. So the machine is working hard, and almost none of that work is math, and that's bandwidth bound, and it's completely normal for the stage that writes the answer out. Now the multiprocessors are busy, and the tensor pipe is busy along with them. That's compute bound, and it's normal for reading a long prompt. Now the third row. Everything low, and NVLink carrying a lot. So your GPUs could be spending their time talking rather than computing, and that's communication bound. It should send you to your parallelism settings or to a link that isn't the link you think it is. And the fourth, everything low, including NVLink. So nothing is saturated and nobody is busy. And can a counter tell you why? No, it can't. And that's the one case where you go and pay for the second tool, because a counter can tell you how busy something was, and it can't tell you why nothing was busy. So what did that card just save you? An afternoon. Because earlier in this course, we worked out compute bound or memory bound by running a sweep on your own hardware and reading 2 curves off it. That's still what you should do when you want the whole curve. But those 4 numbers can answer the same question of readings that were already being collected while you were asleep. Same verdict, but 1 layer down, and you didn't have to run anything. Now there's one number down here that will mislead you. And I've watched it mislead people who knew what they were doing. Occupancy. So occupancy counts how many warps sit resident on a multiprocessor. And a warp is just a small group of threads the GPU schedules together. And it sounds like the number you want, right? More work sitting there sounds like a better used GPU. And DCGM's own documentation says In as many words, that higher occupancy does not necessarily indicate better GPU usage. And we should be precise about why, because DCGM's own words are narrower than what people usually say about it. If your workload is short of bandwidth, then yes, higher occupancy can mean your card is being used better. But if it's short of math instead, that doesn't follow at all, and you can have plenty of WAPs resident and still be waiting. So, what should you do with occupancy? Don't read it as a score and don't put it on the wall as one. Put the tensor pipe reading next to the memory interface reading instead, because those two can tell you which resource is actually saturated. And occupancy will only ever tell you how much work was sitting there. Now, the cheapest thing in this entire episode, and most teams I talk to don't have it. Your GPU keeps a field that says why its clocks are currently reduced, and it's one field, and it's already sitting there whether or not anybody ever reads it. There's a software power cap in there, a software thermal slowdown, and then the one to care about called hardware slowdown. And NVIDIA is very direct about what that one does. It will cut your core clocks by a factor of 2 or more. And it can fire when your card gets too hot, or when your power supply asserts a brake on it, or when the power draw has to be cut fast. So, what can you actually see from where you are sitting? Your token rate halves, and that's exactly where we came in. And the batches still form, the cache still fills, the queue still drains, and every ratio on your dashboard is still structurally correct because all of it is happening at half speed together now. So there's no software symptom to go and find. There's just less. So that's an alert on one field being anything other than zero. It should take you an afternoon at most, and it can save you a week of looking in the wrong place. And while you are in there, add the XID field. That's your GPU reporting a fault about itself. And add the PCI Express retry counter too, because a flaky link will quietly turn one card into the slow one everybody waits for. And now the part I would like you to check today because it genuinely surprised me. Open the default metrics file the DCGM exporter ships with. Your multiprocessor counter and your occupancy counter are both in there commented out. So nobody is collecting them unless somebody on your team uncommented them. And the clock field, the throttling one, the one we have just spent a minute on, isn't in that file at all. So having DCGM running is one thing, and being able to read these 4 numbers is another. Which one is true where you work? Open that file, turn the 2 commented ones back on, add the clock field and the XID field, and restart the exporter. That's this afternoon's job, and it's going to be the cheapest thing anybody asks you to do in this whole course. So back to the case that sent us down here. Everything low and nothing saturated. And why can a counter not answer that one? Because a counter is an average over a window. So it hands you one number for the whole of that window, and it throws away the order things happened in. So it comes back and says, the memory interface was busy 40% of the time. And that can mean it ran at 40% the whole way through, or it can mean it ran flat out for 4 seconds and then nothing happened for 6. Same average, but a completely different machine underneath it. And you can't tell which one you've got without knowing the order things happened in. So that's a profiler. On NVIDIA hardware, it's Nsight systems, and it will record your jobs along a time axis so we can finally see the empty spaces in between them. And 2 flags here matter far more than the rest. The first is the CUDA graph tracing setting, and we want that set to node. A CUDA graph is a sequence of GPU jobs captured once and replayed as one submission, and both vLLM and TensorRT-LLM capture your decode step that way by default. And the profiler will record that graph as one item unless you ask otherwise. So without the flag, the whole decode step arrives as one solid block with nothing inside it. And there's nothing you can learn about decode from it. Now, the honest half. NVIDIA says node collection can add significant runtime overhead. So we are buying that detail, and you turn it off again afterwards. The second is the Python Gale trace. The Gale is the lock that lets only one Python thread run at a time, and contention on it can be a real and easily missed reason for gaps between the jobs. It's one word on the trace flag, so I'd have it on. And then we read the gaps, because the shape of a gap can give you its cause. Idle GPU with Python busy in between, so the host is doing scheduling or tokenizing or sampling. then tiny jobs back to back, and that means you will be spending your time launching work rather than doing it. And then a sawtooth, so a long dense block, and then a sparse stretch, and that's a prefill blocking your decode. The rest are on screen with what to do about each one. And what will all of this cost you? vLLM says this itself. End users should never turn profiling on because it is going to significantly slow your inference down. And stopping it isn't free either. Their documentation says 100 requests worth of trace for a 70 billion parameter model on an H100 takes about 10 minutes just to flush to disk. And there's one more layer under that, and I will be quick because most of you should never need it. Nsight Compute goes inside a single job and tells you how close it got to what your card can actually do on math and on memory, but it gets there by replaying the job and serializing the launches. So this is a job you take out and run on its own. You never point it at a server that is serving people. And on Trainium, you have the same two layers. So neuron monitor for the counters and the neuron profiler for the traces, and its signal for spilling off the chip is the scratch pad growing. Now, those names I promised you. Every counter we have talked about today has just been renamed by NVIDIA, and the active ones are the ratio ones now. Your dashboard is fine today because the old names are kept as aliases and they still resolve. But NVIDIA files them under deprecated and says they will eventually be removed. So last time we saw a rename ship with the old name deleted and the panel drew nothing. This time the old name still works and it will stop working on some release nobody read the notes for. Same event, but two different policies, and only one of them can empty your dashboard today. The names on that card are current on the 16th of August, 2026, and that's the day I'm recording this. So, what does the whole episode look like as a price list? Checking the hardware is running at full speed costs one alert rule, and it's the first thing to rule out. Your counters cost nothing to read, and they will tell you which resource is saturated. A profiler costs you a slowed down server and 10 minutes of flushing, and you pay that when your counters say nobody is busy at all. And a kernel profiler costs you taking the job out of production altogether. And which two of those ships switched off? The two cheapest ones. So go and switch them on. Next time your dashboard is green, your counters look reasonable, and your users are still complaining. So we work out which layer is lying to you. See you then.